Hi. For my final presentation, I decided to make a video. And in this video, I want to describe my journey of how I designed my life, explain each step of the process that I took, and talk about my prototypes and how I tested them. To begin, I want to discuss the empathy stage of the process. For me and probably many others, this was one of the most important steps in the process because in order to really create something beneficial, you have to know the person who's going to be using it, and in this case, that's me. In order to really empathize with myself and understand myself better, I did several things in order to really nail this step. One way I empathized was through journaling. First, I went back and looked through a lot of my journal entries from this past year since I've started school here at BYU, and I wanted to see how my thoughts and life had changed from then to now. I found that while what I did every day changed a little bit, my core values and long-term goals were ever present and unchanging. In addition to looking back at old journal entries, I made it a point to go into more depth while writing in my journal over the length of the course. During our empathy week, I came up with a deep soul-searching question for each day of the week and took time to answer it clearly and specifically in my journal. Some of those questions were: what motivates and inspires me? What is your biggest fear? What's your biggest dream? Or do you live for yourself or for others? By taking the time to really search myself, I was able to define what I stand for a lot better and understand my desires for my life and for my future. Another way I used empathy was by answering the questions we were originally given, like what would your perfect job look like? My answer to this question was that I would feel like I'm constantly adding value to whatever I'm working on, whether it's a huge project, a new business or idea, someone's life, etc. I would feel like I'm important to my job and I'd work with a lot of new people. I'd be surrounded by people who are smarter than me and who I enjoy spending time with and work well with. Another question was, what are 3 values that are integral to your life? My answers were giving an honest, intense effort towards whatever I'm pursuing, continuously strengthening current relationships and building new ones, and doing what I love, exploring and expanding my passions, acting on them, and finding new passions. The other main stage of my empathizing was to determine what some of my strengths and core values were, and I did this by taking several personality tests, and I found that some of my top soft skills or values are curiosity, humor, love of learning, fairness, and hope. Knowing what values represent you in your life is very valuable when deciding on a career and a life path. By taking these steps to really empathize and understand myself, I was much better equipped to start designing my life with these things in mind. The second step in the process is to define, and I did this by following our original presentation instructions, by coming up with several points of view or perspectives about my future career. Ultimately, from a large group, I narrowed it down to 3 choices. Number 1, I want a career that will allow me to work with and meet new people, as well as strengthen relationships with current clients. 2, I want a career that will accommodate the needs of my family and allow me to spend time with them. And number 3, I want a career that I am passionate about or can become passionate about. With these values or perspectives in mind, I began the ideation process to support these points of view that I had determined. It was easy at first to come up with possible career choices, but it got harder and harder as I got closer to 50 different choices, and I found myself having to stretch my imagination, look outside of the box, and think a little more radically. After the ideation process, I was able to narrow my options down to 4 career choices that ultimately I would enjoy pursuing, or that were a little more radical. I fleshed these out and kind of came up with some different life plans that would take me in that direction. So I want to talk a little bit about each of those 4. My first prototype was to become a musician. I've always loved music. I've played guitar and piano for years, and I've always fancied the thought of just going after it and going into musical performance. Part of this assignment was to think a little bit radically and more outside of the box in order to stretch our imagination and our possibilities, and to get a different perspective on the things that we could possibly do. Pursuing a career as a musician would force me to change my direction drastically. I'd have to change my major, make time to practice and perform, find money for new equipment, but it would also allow me to embrace my passion and love for music and for songwriting and performance. The values that this career would represent are passion, risk, creativity, and exploration. The next prototype I came up with was to go with traditional finance, which is the career I'm pursuing right now. If I stick with the traditional finance course, then I will continue getting involved with the business school here at BYU, and I'll try my best to land a prestigious internship with a reputable company like Disney, Goldman Sachs, Google, Bain, etc. I'll begin working as a financial analyst and immerse myself in the world of business and finance from that point. The values that embody a career in this field are strategy, business communication, technical financial analysis skills, and teamwork. The next prototype I created was to go into property management. Since starting school at BYU, I've had 2 jobs working as a leasing agent for apartment complexes. I've come to appreciate and enjoy working in this industry, and I work for a great property management group. I would continue working with my current company and over time gain more responsibilities and new positions until I graduate in finance in 2019, and at that time I could move up to corporate with my current company or a new one and be involved in more of the important business decisions and processes in the property management industry. The values associated with this career are strong people and communication skills, extreme attention to detail and organization, and the ability to create happiness for residents, clients, and employees. My final prototype was to start a social venture. I'm very interested in the idea of starting my own business, and I've always been interested in how I can mix business with charity in order to do what I love doing while also serving others with my career. I would first have to find a social problem that I'm really passionate about, something like poverty, education, human rights, and build a business model around that problem and develop it while I'm in school until I graduate, and then it could really take off. The values surrounding this choice would be riskiness and uncertainty, but also learning, growth, and the reward of creating something out of nothing. So in order to test these prototypes, I decided to create a Qualtrics survey, and I relied heavily on feedback from close friends and family in order to see kind of what other people in my life thought would be fitting for me based on the prototypes that I had come up with. So in this survey, I explained very clearly the prototypes that I had created for each career choice or option, and I explained the values associated with each. I also talked a little bit about my personal values, my strengths, and my passions, and I sort of asked them to match up my values and my passions and my strengths with the career choice that they thought would be best. So what I found from the survey was that most people actually thought I would be best going into a social venture. This was very interesting for me because it's always something I've thought about, but it's never something I've really considered as an actual option. So it's very helpful because I can actually look into that a little bit more and see if it's something I really want to do, based on what other people thought about and based on what I've come up with. In conclusion, I ultimately learned a lot more about myself through this course and this process. I learned that I have more options than just the one I've been planning on. And I also learned that while I may not be able to go all out in each one of my prototypes, I can blend them together. I can do finance, property management, start a social venture, and pursue music as a hobby. Going forward, I plan to continue this process in order to help me shape my future and continue designing my life, as well as come up with solutions to other problems I'll face in my life. Thank you.